Good afternoon. It's February 2nd, 2022, and on your screen is a live view of Falcon 9 as it waits for its 12:27 p.m. Pacific Time launch from Space Launch Complex 4 East at Vandenberg Space Force Base off the coast of California. My name is Kate Tice, and I'm a Reliability Engineering Manager here at SpaceX, joining you from our headquarters about 150 miles south of the launch site. Our mission today is NROL 87 for the National Reconnaissance Office, or NRO. Today marks the NRO's first launch of 2022 and their 60th launch since public disclosure of launches began in December 1996. It also marks SpaceX's 143rd launch overall, our 5th launch of the year, and the second of 3 launches for this week. Now, for those of you that have been following along, you know that our most recent mission lifted off from Space Launch Complex 40 down in Florida on Monday. Following today's launch of NROL 87, we're set to launch our next Starlink mission tomorrow from Pad 39A off the coast of Florida. We're currently at T-minus 11 minutes and 11 seconds, and conditions are, as you can see on your screen, gorgeous for today's launch. Obviously, the weather's looking good. We have no major areas of concern. The range is green and ready to support. And finally, the vehicle and payload are in good health. Today's payload, the NROL 87 satellite, is a national security payload designed, built, and operated by the National Reconnaissance Office. NRO missions provide critical information to more than 500,000 government users, to include every member of the intelligence community, 24 domestic agencies, our nation's military, lawmakers, and decision makers. Here's a closer look at the NRO and its capabilities.
For 60 years, we have been making the intelligence that keeps America safe possible. We are the leader in developing, building, launching, and operating our country's space reconnaissance systems. Our adversaries are moving fast, so we are moving faster to stay above all threats. We are going beyond, building resilience in everything we do, innovating faster to create the technology of the future with a world-class workforce alongside our partners and allies. Our future is built on more than half of a century of unrivaled success in space operations. The National Reconnaissance Office, above and beyond.
The NRO has a busy launch year planned ahead for 2022, with more than a half dozen launches scheduled and a dozen payloads planned for orbit. While SpaceX has launched several missions for the NRO, today's mission represents the first launch of a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket procured directly under the National Security Space Launch, or NSSL program. NSSL is a government launch acquisition program aimed at ensuring continued access to space for national security missions. The program is overseen and operated through US Space Force's Space Systems Command, headquartered in Los Angeles, California. One thing to note, per the NRO's request, we will not be sharing any views from the second stage today, and we will be ending our webcast around the T+8 minute mark, just after Falcon 9 touches back down onto land. We're almost at 8 minutes and 30 seconds.
Hold authority communication check. Please respond with strength and clarity when pulled. NOPS OD.
Loud and clear.
PD.
Loud and clear.
Quick poll there, as we just heard. We're approaching T-minus 8 minutes. All systems continue to look good for an on-time liftoff. So for now, let's take a closer look at the rocket on your screen. Falcon 9 is our 2-stage rocket standing at 230 feet, or about 70 meters tall, roughly the height of a 20-story building. When it's fully fueled, it'll hold just over 1 million pounds of propellant that the vehicle will burn through in less than 3 minutes after liftoff. We began loading those propellants on both stages of the vehicle back at T-minus 35 minutes. The bottom 2/3 of the vehicle is the first stage. While it's designed to be reflown 10 or more times with minimal refurbishment between flights, today will be the first flight for this particular booster. As you might be able to tell, that its shiny white coat of paint can be clearly seen. There's no soot on this booster. At the bottom of the first stage, there are 9 Merlin engines that will get Falcon 9 off the ground and up to the thinner parts of the Earth's atmosphere. The 2 stages will separate from one another. The second stage continues to orbit, while the first stage makes its way back down to Earth for its landing attempt at Landing Zone 4, which is not too far from where it will lift off. There you can see Landing Zone 4 on your screen now. If successful, this will be the first landing for this booster. It will also mark the 105th successful recovery of an orbital-class rocket. Now, as for the second stage, which we see there just under the payload fairing, that will ignite its single Merlin vacuum engine, or MVAC, about 2.5 minutes into flight. It's this engine that will take the NROL-87 spacecraft to its intended orbit. At the moment, our payload today is safely enclosed inside the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, which you see there, the structure at the very top of the rocket. This protects the satellite from aerodynamic heating, loads, and contamination during ascent. Once we reach the vacuum of space...
Stage 1, fuel load is complete.
All right, good news there. Stage 1 fuel load has completed. Now, once we reach the vacuum of space, we'll jettison those fairing halves while the second stage continues on to orbit. Just like our Falcon 9 booster, today these fairing halves are also brand new, and we will be attempting to retrieve them from the water once they make their way back to Earth. As I mentioned earlier, this mission is for the National Reconnaissance Office, or NRO. The NRO is responsible for developing, acquiring, launching, and operating America's reconnaissance satellites, as well as operating associated data processing facilities in support of national security. These sophisticated systems are used to develop military targeting data, support international humanitarian relief operations, and assess the impact of natural disasters. As a reminder, per the NRO's request, we will not be showing any views from our second stage today, and we will be ending our webcast around the T+8 minute mark, just shortly after Falcon 9 touches back down at Landing Zone 4. So far, we are at T-5 minutes and 6 seconds, and all systems remain go for an on-time liftoff. The range remains green and ready to support. As for the weather, as you can see by those views from Vandenberg Space Force base, it's a gorgeous day for launch. We have basically 0% probability of violation with respect to weather rules for today. The vehicle and payload continue to be healthy. In fact, the payload is now on internal power. And if for some reason today that we are unable to launch, we do have a backup window tomorrow at the same time. Next up, the truss structure there next to the vehicle, known as
MD, cell D on countdown 1.
TMD. It's a MD.
Is coming through the final status check. You and your team are go for launch and landing.
MD and team are go for launch and landing.
Copy.
All right, we can see there that the clamp arms on the transporter erector, or TE, have now begun to open in preparation for retraction of the TE. This is one of the last major visual milestones that we have prior to launch. At this point in time, both the first stage and second stage are nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen, or LOX, as you often hear us call it. The white clouds that you see there on the side of the vehicle are normal. That's just that super chilled liquid oxygen coming into contact with the ambient air around the vehicle. The fuel is completely loaded on both first and second stage, and we're expecting the first stage to wrap up its LOX loading in about 15 seconds at T-3 minutes, and second stage will complete its LOX loading at T-2 minutes. At T-60 seconds, we'll hear a call out that Falcon 9 is in startup.
Stage 1, LOX load complete.
All right, so stage 1 is now fully loaded with both all of its fuel and liquid oxygen, and we're waiting for a second stage to wrap up that LOX load. When we hear the call out that Falcon 9 is in startup, that means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. And then just inside of T-2 seconds, we will light the Merlin M1D engines and set for liftoff. Right now, the NROL-87 payload continues to be healthy on internal power, and the Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. So We're about 20 seconds away from second stage LOX load completion. Everything looking really good. As you can see, there's not a cloud in sight. Typically at Vandenberg, we have some fog to deal with. So if you're local to the area, you're sure to see a beautiful liftoff and landing, as we will be attempting to land back at landing zone 4, which is about 1,000 feet away from the launch pad.
Stage 2, LOX load complete.
All right, there we heard the call out. Stage 2 LOX load is complete. At this point in time, the vehicle will start venting the liquid oxygen, as you can see there on your screen. The leftover liquid oxygen basically left in the load lines. Everything continuing to look good for an on-time liftoff.
MD is go for launch.
Falcon is in startup.
There we just heard mission director is go for launch, and that the vehicle is in startup. The the onboard flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. We're now at T-minus 25 seconds. Let's listen in to the final countdown.
T-minus 15. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff of L-87. Go Falcon, go, go.
Vehicles pitching downrange.
Nominal first stage chamber pressures.
We're now T-plus 40 seconds into the NROL 87 mission. Falcon 9 is throttling down in preparation.
Power and telemetry.
In preparation for max Q, which will take place at T-plus 1 minute and 12 seconds. Max Q, of course, being the moment in which the vehicle experiences the highest amount of aerodynamic pressure. Beautiful views of the California coast there in the background.
Max Q.
All right, there we heard the call out for max Q. Everything looking good with stage 1 trajectory. Now, in the next couple minutes, we have 5 events coming up in quick succession, starting with main engine cutoff, stage separation, stage 1 flip, second engine start 1, and then the boost back burn. Main engine cutoff, as the name suggests, we will we will shut down all 9 Merlin engines. The stages will separate. The first stage will actually flip over and conduct a boost back burn, and that's what we have to do in order to fly the booster back towards land. And of course, during that time as well, we'll have second engine start 1, where we will ignite the Merlin vacuum engine. Again, not a cloud in the sky, gorgeous liftoff from Vandenberg Space Force Base, Space Launch Complex 4 East.
First stage engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
Stage 1 boost back startup.
All right, there you saw all of those crystal clear, beautiful views. That first stage now is performing the boost back
Fairing
burn.
separation.
And there we heard the call out that fairing separation has been confirmed. Unfortunately, we're unable to broadcast that at the request of our customer, but we were able to confirm the deployment of that. We're now 3 minutes into launch, and the next milestones coming up include the conclusion of the boost back burn, which we see right there on your screen, and that will finish at T plus 3 minutes and 15 seconds.
Stage 1 boost back shutdown.
All right, there we heard call out that the boost back burn has completed. Our first stage will be attempting a land landing in just a few moments. One of the nice things about land landings is that we're not subject to ocean weather, and it's pretty convenient to land the first stage basically right next to where it lifted off from. However, our ability to execute a land landing really is dependent upon the customer's needs. Their mission trajectory and performance needed by the satellite is what determines if we can return to land. Most of the time, their requirements don't allow for a return to launch site, which is what we're performing today, which is why we also developed the capability to land our first stages.
Both vehicles on nominal trajectory.
Good news there, both first and second stage reporting to have nominal trajectory. So that's why we developed our ability to land our first stages out in the ocean with our drone ships. Now, in order to complete today's land landing, the first stage has 2 more burns left. Next up is the entry burn, and that's where we will reignite 3 of the Merlin engines on the first stage. That will help to slow the booster down as it re-enters the upper part of the Earth's atmosphere. That's a view there coming from inside the inner stage. We can see the stage pusher there. Here we have a beautiful view. I think that's probably one of the channel islands there on the right-hand side of the screen. We can see 2 of the 4 hypersonic grid fins. We deploy those shortly after the stages separate, and those grid fins help steer the vehicle during descent. You will also see that right there, we just saw one, like a puff of white gas. That is nitrogen gas from attitude control systems that help control the vehicle's orientation. So there we can see the booster is steering itself back to Vandenberg Space Force base. Piece of ice there on the left-hand side. Absolutely stunning views today, both of liftoff and our landing attempt. As I mentioned before, Vandenberg typically has quite a bit of fog, so it's more common to hear a launch than see one from Vandenberg. So for those that were able to catch it, I'm sure it was a stunning sight. We are about 20 seconds away from the entry burn. Again, this burn is the second of 3 burns that we will be performing today. And this burn is designed to slow the vehicle down significantly.
Both vehicles are on a nominal trajectory.
So the booster is now basically coming through the thicker part of the Earth's atmosphere. So we're going to slow its velocity down with this entry burn.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
There we can see that entry burn has begun, and this will last for another few seconds.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And we can see that entry burn has concluded. The vehicle continues to steer itself for a precise landing back at landing zone 4 at Vandenberg Space Force base. The next burn we have is the landing burn. During the first stage landing burn, a single Merlin engine, the center engine, will relight and slow the vehicle down.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
If you look closely, you should be able to not only see our landing zone, but our launch site as well.
Stage 2 FTS has saved.
The landing zone is pretty close to our launch pad. Shortly before the vehicle touches down.
Stage 1 landing burn, start up.
All right, we can see the landing burn has begun. Landing zone coming into view for the first stage. Again, this is the first flight for this booster and first landing attempt.
Stage 1 landing leg, deploy.
And as you can see, a picture-perfect landing of this first stage booster, its first flight and first landing. This booster will be prepared for reflight on another NRO mission later this year. This also marks our 105th overall successful recovery of an orbital class rocket, including both Falcon 9 and Heavy first stage landings. As I mentioned earlier, at the request of our customer, the National Reconnaissance Office, we are concluding our webcast coverage early today. We would like to hear the NRO for entrusting us with today's launch, and a special thanks to the Range and the Federal Aviation Administration for licensing support. For all those tuning in, thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow for our Starlink launch.